So if you ever get sick of creating always the same rolling bass lines, offbeat, triplet, whatsoever, and you want to do something differently, I advise you to try to use a multi-layer bass line, which means that we're going to combine 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, it all depends from your taste, layers of the bass line and create a kind of unique sounding groove. So in this track I have the kick, which is kinda a little bit more deeper, so it's not a typical psytrance kick. So it's a bit more solid, it doesn't contain that much of the punch on the mids and on the highs, which is gonna create that it's kinda a little bit further away, which is gonna create this depth into the track. And then I have the square bass line, which is kinda main layer of the bass line that's covering only the sub frequencies. So the notes of this bass line is they're gonna go in F note, but it's gonna be re-triggered on a certain positions, as that way it's gonna be participating in the groove that you're gonna hear a bit further on in the track. So this is kind of the base or the skeleton of the kick in the bass. And then I used one more channel. I used the Legend Hans Zimmer from Synapse Audio. Very, very top quality VST instrument. Analog sounding, as they really have an amazing options over here where we can turn on this fixed filter bank where you can rechange certain things, which is kind of emulate the analog sounding. So there are two different algorithms. One is vintage, another is flat. For this particular case, I used the flat. It really kind of emulates the analog synths. What I did over here is I just added like few bass stabs or few bass notes and kind of combined it with the square bass line that I already created and the kick that was, of course, going in that position. So the delay on the Legend HZ is also adding a little bit more of the complexity for the whole rhythm or the groove, and the whole game is getting a bit more interesting since it's kind of delayed, so there are repetitions that are participating in the groove itself. When it comes for the processing, since we are using two different layers of the bassline, we need to be careful about the phases. And I'm not gonna go in depth and like open the oscilloscopes or analyzers or trying to get a perfect sounding phase position, as if I find the perfect sounding phase position and if I remove the low cut, we're gonna hear that we're gonna create a boost of the signal in that position, since the two very, very low end heavy elements are gonna be summed in the same position and they're gonna create like a huge burst of the energy in that position. And then I moved to the 45 in plus, like 45 degrees, and I realized that. And so I decided to try low cut. So I tried, the first was like with 12 and the position was around here. But I believe they don't kind of interact very well in this position, so I moved it to the like best sounding position of this second layer when it's gonna be summed with the square together. So again we have this huge burst of the sound, and then I decided to try how it's gonna sound on 24 dB per octave low cut and to push it a little bit more inside, so to around 142 hertz. So for me, this was good enough, since I don't want to complicate it that much. I could manage to use the sub, but I tried both of these combinations and I decided that it sounds a bit better, since this stab, it's a bass line, but I'm going to remove the first harmonic, or I'm going to reduce it with a low cut, so they interact way better, as I don't need the first harmonic, since the low end is already sounding kind of big and very nice, since I used the square bassline for it, and it's kind of low and is covered already. I already mixed it and I really set it to sound as good to my taste. So the second layer bassline is there to increase the rhythmical section, and it's not there to participate in the low end, so I'm kind of avoiding that problem. And also I did try to keep or to reduce the level of the first harmonic by removing the low cut and then just like doing one with the bends. So just by reducing, it sounds very nice. I find the best sounding phase position for it. And again, when it comes for the phases, I know that most of you have been taught and kind of have the opinion that everything should be watched through the analyzers or the oscilloscopes in order to find the best or the perfect aligning phase position. I really don't think that's a smart thing to do, as in the perfect aligning phase position, combining two really low and heavy elements, we're going to create a huge burst of the sound, and then we're going to get an opposite problem. Of course, the position where they're going to cancel each other is also not welcome. So it can be or some position in between, or we can reduce the level of the first harmonic and that way avoid the problem. What is the best solution? I don't know, and I don't think that anyone knows what is the best solution. I think that all of these things should be tried for each case, and that way find what suits the best for your track. Again, in order to understand this, what suits the best for your track, you need to be able to hear it, and then again, you need to have a very good converters. You need to have as best as possible speakers, as well as the acoustically treated room. Of course, you can use the pair of headphones. I just got my VSX, which I'm using just for referencing, since the sound in my studio is something that I believe everyone would like to have. And I'm really happy, and the results that I'm getting without too much struggle in this room is something that I really wish to all of you just to experience at once, so you'll be able to understand how important the listening environment is and how much faster you're going to do everything, and how much frustration and all the things that comes for measurements and other things are just going to disappear in a certain moment. So this was the second baseline. The third layer, actually I used two different presets with the two different VSTs. Actually, I used from Yuhe, I used the Ace, which is kind of very nice for the low end. So I created like a small stab that is going in some type of the polyrhythm, like. And then I use another one just because this one is covering like the top end of it, and then there's a second one. Which is give kind of the character. So combined with the first layer of the bass line and the square and the kick, all together sounds like. If that is compared with without these second layers or third. Now in the context of the whole track, so it gives the whole groove like a complexity and a bit more interesting game. And of course, there's nothing wrong if you want to use only the sub layer, if that's what you like, if it's a more simple way. I really love to kind of complicate it a little bit and to create something that's not going to be super easy to recreate, or just to have like something unique in this track, even though this is not that hard, but still like these small things is something that I believe is just like creating my music to sound at least a little bit personal and unique. So this was the video about how you can use multiple layers to create a little bit more complex and to enhance the groove in your tracks. Thank you very much for watching, and see you soon with another video. I'm very excited to invite you all back to the Boomland this October for another round of Psytrance music production course. Last year's gathering was an incredible success, an amazing experience of connection, sharing and creating with people who are as passionate about Psytrance as we are. This year, from October 14th till 20th, we are doing it all again. We'll get very deep into the music production, covering everything you need to significantly enhance your production skills. But beyond the session, we'll also have plenty of time to soak into the beauties of the Boomland. Trust me, there's no better place to inspire your creativity and recharge your spirit. And, of course, you'll once again be welcomed and hosted by one of the most wonderful teams out there. Places are limited, so make sure to secure your spot on time. Apply now and let's create a magic together. See you at the Boomland.